Yep, thanks everyone for sticking around for the late session, and thanks the Silence folks for organizing. Yeah, I think it's a great event for the entire community. Let's jump kind of straight into it. So we're talking about an institutional wallet, which, the basic thing that you need to know, it's essentially a wallet for companies. And you can think about it as essentially a set of users who need to operate on a joint set of addresses and a joint set of private keys. And for this talk, we kind of refer to this, single deployment of a wallet as a workspace that serves, say, a single company. And the problem that we're interested in this talk is essentially, how do we add an additional user, a new user, to the workspace? And the two parameters that we'll be looking at is, first of all, security. Of course, when we're adding a new user, we'd like to prevent an attacker from gaining access to the workspace. And specifically, we'll be interested in a threat model where we'll try to defend against a compromised wallet provider from trying to essentially, get into that workspace, and we'll see precisely what do we mean by that. And the second aspect that we're interested in is user experience, and this one is a bit more fuzzy, but in general we're talking about things like how easy it is for the user. Do they need to remember some kind of phrase? Do they need to type things in? How many steps do they need to take? And is there any delay in the process? And for the rest of the talk, we'll kind of refer to the person doing, inviting the new user as the admin, and we'll talk about the new user as kind of the person who needs to join the workspace. So yeah, I'll kind of define the setup and the threat model a bit more precisely. We'll talk about why is this kind of this problem is non-trivial, and then we'll discuss hopefully three different approaches to the problem. So here's kind of the simplified setup. We'll talk about a 2 out of 2 threshold signature wallet where users hold 1 share on their mobile app, and then the wallet provider holds a second share on the server. So you need one user share and one of the wallet shares to do a signature. And for simplicity here, we'll kind of ignore a few security mechanisms which are not actually that relevant to the problem we're dealing with, and we'll assume that all the users essentially hold a copy of the same share, and there's also no refreshes going on. So it's literally the server holding 1 share, and then there's a bunch of copies of the different users, and we need to provide the new user with another copy of that share. And again, the threat that we're talking about is what happens if the wallet provider servers is compromised. And the goal is to prevent the wallet provider from stealing the user's share, right? The whole purpose of MPC is to not make the server a single point of failure. So we want to say that if the server gets compromised, they still can't get hold of that other share and essentially compromise the private key, which is the worst possible attack. Of course, we will not consider in this talk kind of the other side of the attack, kind of client-side attacks. So what happens if the client is malicious, if there's malware on device? All those attacks are super relevant, but in some sense they're not that relevant for this problem of giving another share, because if a user is malicious or a client device is compromised, they already have a copy of the user's share, and there's other means to defense against the scenario, kind of this reverse scenario where the client is compromised and the server is honest, but we can kind of not think about it today. Obviously, the scenario in which both the client and the server are compromised are kind of hard to defend against, because then you have both shares. Yeah, that's kind of the setup. Cool. So let's maybe see why does this problem kind of come up in wallets? Let's just look at any other enterprise system, any SaaS solution you would use. They have systems for inviting new users. Why aren't they good enough for us wallets? So let's look at something like Slack. If I want to add an additional user, I kind of go in the Slack UI, I type in the email, have some place I even can insert a custom message, and then the new user gets an email, clicks the button, maybe authenticates with their email, types in, and he's in their workspace. And kind of the basic observation here that and none of those solutions even aim to provide some sort of end-to-end encryption between the users and the server. In this case, the Slack server in the wallet setting, this would be the wallet server, sees everything that that I would say type in this form, and there's no really any meaningful way to give to pass something end-to-end from the admin to the user. So it's not like in a wallet space you could have the admin maybe adding the share to the invitation and relaying it to the server. This would be completely insecure in the threat model that we're discussing. So we need to do something a little bit more secure. So yeah, the first approach that any cryptographer needs to maybe start like as an exercise. What can we do with trusted hardware? So in this case, let's assume that we have the wallet provider operating some sort of enclave, and that the users can authenticate to that enclave, maybe using their email or a password or something of that form. Well, if you have a secure enclave, you can do the following type of solution. The admin could connect to the enclave, attest that they're actually talking to the enclave, then upload the share, and then the new user can authenticate to the enclave. And then download the share. That's one way to do it. Of course, what's nice about this protocol. It's non-interactive, meaning the admin can kind of do its part and then go offline, and the user can come and join the system and download the share. From a security perspective, obviously there's like the trust in the enclave itself, but which is in some sense implicit. It has to be the way in this solution. But another observation that this is actually only secure if the authentication system is secure. So if the attacker can impersonate the user, they can pull the share instead of the actual user and basically steal the share. So it means that if the wallet provider is the one that's running the auth service needs to be running inside the TE, inside the enclave as well, because otherwise the attacker can impersonate the user and steal the share. A second problem here is that let's say the other option, maybe the wallet provider using a third-party auth provider, this also requires maybe something like an Auth0 or Okta or something of that form. It also requires quite a lot of care because you need to make sure that the auth protocol must be secure against the part of the wallet provider that is not running inside the enclave. So you need to make sure you terminate the authentication TLS inside the enclave, and it's also kind of tricky, I think, to get right. And obviously, there are all the cases you need to consider of what happens if the actual auth provider gets compromised. So yeah, that's kind of one maybe direction that you can solve this problem. The second one is, okay, let's we kind of want an end-to-end security here, so let's maybe do key exchange. So the standard approach to do it with key exchange is the new user would authenticate to the server, upload some kind of encryption public key. The admin would download the public key, encrypt the share, store it at the cloud, and then the user would download the encrypted share and decrypt it. Right? That's one way. You could do it also with a Diffie-Hellman key exchange, but that's just one way to do it. So first observation in terms of from a user experience perspective, there's three. This requires three passes, right? Admin kind of invites the user, then the user connects, uploads their key, then the admin needs to encrypt the share. So you kind of have this back and forth, it could be meaningful from a user experience perspective, right? I mean, you can imagine scenarios where the user and the admin are in different time zones, so every round of communication can add, in terms of wall clock time, could be substantial. The person can go on vacation. So I think it is a disadvantage in practice. But from a security perspective, obviously this is like an unauthenticated key exchange, and so the protocol is only secure against a passive attacker. So if the server is just eavesdropping, the protocol is secure. But if the server runs a man-in-the-middle attack, then this is broken because the attack is the server can just replace the user's public key with the malicious public key and then decrypt the share. And what makes this attack, this man-in-the-middle attack, worse here is that it's undetectable, right? That the server can just, after learning the share, re-encrypt it with the user's public key, and so the user still gets the share, but the attacker learned the share. And the thing that this thing is kind of bad in this wallet scenario is that if the server is compromised, they can kind of run this attack for a while and learn the private keys of multiple customers, and then steal all the funds at once. So coverts attack are particularly dangerous in this case. And you could say, okay, so this is kind of a weak solution in terms of you assume it's only semi-honest security. I can say it's not something that we haven't seen in other protocols, in other cases in mind. If you take a look, for instance, at something like SSH, when you connect to a server the first time, you essentially have to trust the public key it's telling you. So it's this trust on first use model, which you can see, it still gives you something, right? It tells you that if at the time of joining the organization, the server is semi-honest, then for the entire duration of the wallet operation, the system is secure. But it is a questionable security guarantee. So that's kind of the second solution. That's unauthenticated key exchange. And then the third one that I want to discuss is, what happens if we, to do authenticated key exchange, what if we do allow some out-of-band communication? And what I mean by that, essentially, we assume that the admin and the user share some communication channel that outside of the control of the wallet provider. So think of something like, the admin can maybe send them text message or on Signal or on WhatsApp, send a message to the user. And the way to think about this out-of-band channel, it doesn't have to be fully trusted, but you kind of need to assume that the attacker doesn't control both the wallet servers and this channel. So you definitely don't want to send your entire, maybe all your credentials and the share over chat. But as a secondary channel, this could be helpful. And let's see how. So the basics, the simplest thing that you can do in this scenario, so the admin can upload an encrypted share to the server and just send the decryption key out of band to the user. And then the user authenticates to the server, downloads the encrypted share, takes the key that it got out of band, and decrypts the share. The advantage is we recover, the one-pass protocol, so it's only, in one directional, which is very useful from a user experience. And the disadvantage is this requires sending a lot. We have to send the decryption key, right? So it has to be like a security parameter long. So sending 128 bits is more messy than you think. Actually, we have some kind of examples of why these things can get complicated in practice. But I think you can kind of get the motivation that it is not the ideal solution because the users can easily, it's not like a 6-digit code that you can easily type in. It's something that you really need to copy, paste, and it can get cumbersome. So maybe the last thing I want to talk about is can we actually shorten the out-of-band secret? Because a short secret would be easier to dictate to someone over the phone, manually copy, type in. So can we do something with that? And it turns out there is a cryptographic tool that we can use. It's a tool called password authenticated key exchange. And I'll briefly explain what it is. So in password authenticated key exchange, two users share some kind of common password. And this is actually like a password. This is not a 128-bit long string. This is like a 6 characters, 8 characters password. And the users exchange some messages, run some protocol, and then the output of a protocol is a common session key, which is 128 bits long. And the type of security properties that you'd want from this password authenticated key exchange is the first property is if you only have an eavesdropper attack, so a passive attacker, then this kind of offline attack where they record all their communication and then try to crack the password or find the key. This one is still infeasible in time less than 2 to the 128. So it's much stronger, let's say, than guessing. The attacker cannot guess the password from just observing the communication. On the other hand, if the attacker is online, so he kind of just runs this man-in-the-middle attack and change some of the messages, then what you want to get is the best you can hope for is the best attack that the attacker can do is just guess a password, and he can just try one guess of a password in each execution of the protocol. So he can make a guess, and if he can just get one guess per execution of the protocol, which is the best you can hope for. And here in this online attack, you can settle for much this is where you can settle for a much shorter password because it's an online attack. And this password authenticated key exchange protocol essentially allow you to use really short shared secrets. You can just share like a 6-digit or an 8-digit code out of band, and we have really efficient construction of those from very standard cryptographic assumptions. Some of them are even I think either standardized or on the way to being standardized, and just 2-pass protocols. So just one message to each side, and then the two parties end up with a shared key. So let's see how it would help in this problem. So in this case, the admin would just, when they want to invite a user, they would send the first message of the PAKE protocol, as well as the device would generate this short code. The admin would share this short code with the user out of band. This is much more user-friendly than sharing 128 bits. The user would authenticate to the server, retrieve the server's message, then type in the code they would get out of band, send the, as I said, there's like one message in direction, so the user would send the message in the other direction. At that point, the user can already derive the session key. Then the admin downloads the user message, derives the same session key, and then can encrypt the share under the shared key. And last step, the user downloads the shared key and then obtains the share. So maybe a way to summarize the different options we have for the protocol. So I kind of compare them on like the number of communication passes they require and how many bits you need to communicate out of band. So in that first option we discussed the TE one. This is, of course, you get the benefit of trusted hardware. It's only one communication pass. You don't need to send anything out of band, but you're trusting the enclave. If you're doing this unauthenticated key exchange, it will require 3 passes, but you don't need to type anything, no out-of-band communication necessary. And then if you want to do the authenticated key exchange, you can either do, you can either choose whether you want to do less rounds and send more bits, or you want to do, more rounds and send a fewer amount of bits. So that's kind of the summary. Maybe last thing I want to say is in kind of the more broader, the broader thought that it got me thinking is that we have a lot of deployments of end-to-end encryption, right? Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, they all deploy end-to-end encryption, but somehow applications cannot really leverage that. I feel like at some point Keybase tried to do this kind of open public key directories, and I think it's a good maybe problem to think about of how should we maybe change those systems in a way to allow applications to leverage existing public key directories and existing end-to-end encryption infrastructure, which wallets and other applications could benefit from. So yeah, thank you very much.